We have an icebreaker speech. Please help me welcome Vicki with I Can Do Anything. Vicki Moore. I can do this, I hope. I was alone in a van. It was a state vehicle. I was driving down a dark, narrow, windy road. The wind was blowing. Sticks and sagebrush were passing in front of me. The brush that had overgrown was brushing up against the van as I drove through. It was quite haunting. And as the headlights reached out, you could see the eyeballs of all the animals that were watching me as I drove up the road. At least that's what I thought. I finally arrived at the destination. Now, previously I had been here. It was at Camp Delaney, which is an environmental learning center at Sun Lake State Park. And what you think of as a camp, I envision all these pine trees and campfire pits and a lake and all these things. But instead, Camp Delaney is set far deep into the canyons of Sun Lake State Park. It's surrounded by sagebrush that rolls and Russian olive trees that surround the whole area. It's quite beautiful. But at the time, I saw everything. I saw where the camp was supposed to be. I saw where my cabin was and where the students' cabins were going to be. Because just a month earlier, I had been hired as a Washington Conservation Corps coordinator. It was my job, as I found out, through, well, let me just tell you. It turned out when I was hired that Ange, who was the region manager, handed me the whack and said, this is your job, make it happen. And what it included was I was supposed to provide training for the Corps members. I was supposed to provide employment for 18 to 25-year-olds for 6-month terms, and I was supposed to provide project help out in the parks. So 1 month later, here I am. I don't have a clue, I soon find out, and I'm putting on a training academy, and there are 29 unemployable 18 to 25-year-olds that are going to come to this academy, of which I'm in charge. As it turns out, I had made excellent arrangements. The trainers that came in taught first aid, CPR, defensive driving, flagger training, and we did several construction projects. Oh, there goes my ums. Okay, and there I go. The point is that going into this, I had no idea what I was doing. But what I did was I took the bull by the horns and I made it happen. Surprisingly enough, it was a success. And 9 years later, we had put on many, many training academies. I had put on trainings that went far beyond what we had talked about in our first academy. I had provided programs for the state park commissioners. And Camp Delaney itself now, as a result of our Washington Conservation Corps kids, had a campfire pit with this brushed rock features and benches. It had a basketball court we had put in. It had a volleyball court. And it also had many other features of the buildings that had been improved. Now, in my life too, in the 1960s, when I was still in grade school, I was a member of Mr. Pratt's grade school class. And Mr. Pratt was an apple farmer. And he taught, oh no, he taught each of us, how to plant apple trees. So my dad had bought a plot of land. That land was to be a cherry orchard. And using my vast knowledge from 6th grade Mr. Pratt's class, I taught my dad how to plant cherry trees. So 2 times later, after the trees had died 2 years in a row, he finally had someone that knew what they were doing help him with the project. Well, it turns out my dad later sold the orchard on contract to some individuals that after 4 years of them having it, failed to make payments. And at that time was when my husband was retiring from state parks. And my dad did not want me living in Cooley City, you know, so he said, hey, why don't you buy the orchard? Well, I reviewed the books with my husband. And the books from 1970s and 1980s, it showed it wasn't that expensive to run an orchard. And I told him also, it doesn't take hardly any work, nothing like an apple orchard. And so we bought the orchard. And it was, you guys, it was quite a find because it's 1,400 linear feet of riverfront property. It's just beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. We learned the hard way that we didn't know anything because the first year I had my husband saw in hand, and I was telling him where to cut, and it ends up we had the most beautiful apple trees in our cherry orchard.
Oh.
Because I told him to put, it turned out the warehouses, the field man then did take over and teach my husband how to do it. But the point is that once again, we took the bull by the horns and we made it happen. We grow the most delicious cherries, big cherries I've ever had. When you take a bite of these cherries that are about that size, 9.5 average, when you take a bite out of them, you hear the crunch. You taste this burst of flavor in your mouth, the burgundy flavor and the color. And then you savor it because you don't want to forget it. So anyway, thank you guys for listening, and I appreciate your time.